In the early summer of 1938, Mrs. Jessie Jordan, a 51-year-old Dundee hairdresser, was sent to prison for 4 years, having been found guilty of being a spy. She was born in Glasgow in December 1887, the daughter of Elizabeth Wallace, a domestic servant who'd fallen pregnant, although her father remains unknown, as he wasn't entered onto the birth certificate. Her mother went on to marry John Haddo, a widower, and had another 5 children. The family lived in Lanark, then Perth, and when Jessie was 16, she left home, although by this time she'd taken her stepfather's surname. She found work as a maid, and it was in 1907 that she met Karl Friedrich Jordan, a German waiter. The couple married and chose to live in Germany, with her taking German citizenship. He was called up during World War I, but was killed in 1918. Jessie returned to her family in Perth briefly, but returned to Germany, where she remained until 1937, becoming a hairdresser. In 1920, she married Jordan's cousin, Bauer Baumgarten, with the marriage lasting until 1937, when the couple divorced. That year, Jessie Jordan, choosing to go by her first husband's surname, returned to Scotland under the premise that she required information about her birth to satisfy the authorities in Germany, that she and her daughter, Margaret, were not of Jewish extraction. She also claimed her hairdressing business was failing, as the German suppression of her Jewish clientele was beginning to bite. Shortly before her return to Scotland, however, German military intelligence, the Abwehr, approached her. No one knew, not even her half-brother, William Haddo, of Breadalbine Terrace in Perth, with whom she stayed for several months. When she moved to Dundee, she set up a hairdressing business. She stayed in lodgings in the city and would leave early in the morning, often without taking a cup of tea, declaring that she would make her own breakfast in the shop. Frequently she stayed out until around 11 o'clock at night, but she was never seen carrying any documents or papers. She received no letters at her lodgings, so it was assumed that her sketching was done in a cubicle of her shop at night. In the week before her arrest, she lived in the shop, and neighbours spoke of having seen lights in the building on, sometimes until dawn. Meanwhile, when Jessie had moved to Dundee, her daughter Margaret had come from Hamburg and worked as a housekeeper to William Haddo. Margaret was already married and had been wife to a German merchant, but the marriage had been dissolved. While at Perth, 23-year-old Margaret met Thomas Reid from Glasgow. On her mother's arrest, she turned to him for support, and as a result, the couple fell in love and were married at Gretna Green on 15th April 1938. She too was now entitled to British citizenship. Smiling at her trial at the High Court in Edinburgh as if in bravado, Mrs. Jordan kept her own counsel, as the Lord Justice Clerk, Craigie Aitchison, Lord Aitchison, sentenced her for activities on the Scottish East Coast that amounted to espionage. From the little hairdresser's shop she ran in Kinloch Street in Dundee, there were links that led to the United States and the continent, and at one period of the inquiries, American FBI agents were working in collaboration with the British Secret Service and the police. At the request of foreign agents, she had made sketches showing the situation of Coast Guard stations and coastal defence centres between Kirkcaldy and Montrose, and of an important base in Fife, although this wasn't mentioned specifically in the charge against her. This was most likely lucre's. Although the court hearing was held publicly, no reference was made of how Mrs. Jordan communicated with foreign agents, as officials at the time regarded the disclosure of this information as being against state interests. What was known, however, was that she received a good deal of foreign correspondence through the post to her shop at 1 Kinloch Street, which raised the suspicion of the postman. From 10th December onwards, Alexander Jack, a postal worker at the main Dundee office, was given permission by the Home Office to steam open some of her US franked mail and tasked with taking photographs of their contents. Several post office detectives cooperated with the police and the intelligence department of the War Office regarding this. On 2nd March 1938, following a tip-off, Jordan's shop was raided. John and Mary Curran, who owned the hairdressers previously, found her unusually keen to purchase the shop as a going concern at double the market price, paying £75, then refurbishing it for £300. Then Mary saw a map in Jessie's handbag that was in a back room of the salon, which had military barracks marked. She took it to the police, who photographed it and replaced it back in the handbag. Letters she received at the shop were also suspicious, as these were then forwarded to a chemist's shop in Amsterdam. It was all suspect, and this led to MI5 setting up surveillance with their American counterparts. Soon after the post office had become involved, incriminating evidence was found in the letters. 2 police cars arrived, with MI5's Colonel Hinchley Cook, Chief Constable of Dundee Joseph Nealins, DI Thomas Nicholson, and a police officer, Annie Ross. Jessie was arrested. They eventually found a bag full of airmail letters. The following day, Jessie appeared before magistrates, where she was charged with offences under the Official Secrets Act. Several of the documents obtained by the police following the raid resulted in further inquiries into her and the role she played in the espionage she was charged with. Letters franked with New York were discovered, as were blank US passports and a wad of cash. Dates mentioned in the charges showed the possibility of her activities extending over the best part of a year before the raid. It was declared in court that the information Jessie Jordan obtained could easily have been secured by any foreign agency during peacetime, and in fact, the information had already been obtained, and she was simply tasked with verifying it. In one corner of the courtroom, there was a great deal of sadness, as Jessie, a petite woman, sat in her green feathered cap and faded coat, being dwarfed by 2 constables who sat either side of her. Her daughter, Margaret, sat with her husband, listening and watching. When Lord Aitchison passed sentence, Margaret sobbed bitterly. Mother and daughter met later in a corridor. They kissed and hugged before Jessie was led away to begin her sentence. During her trial, Jessie Jordan had told counsel, "Nationality means nothing to me." She was resigned to prison, for she felt that whether in Scotland or in Germany, only prison could await her. Initially, she was sent to Saughton Prison in Edinburgh, where she became ill and had to undergo surgery. Following the outbreak of World War II, she was transferred to Aberdeen Prison, where she was described as a model prisoner by her solicitor, John R. Bond. He said she wasn't in the least depressed, and to pass the time she did needlework. She never tried to appeal her conviction nor her sentence. Due to her good behaviour, she was released early in 1941, but was arrested immediately for being an enemy alien. She was interred for the rest of the war. When the war ended, she was deported to Germany, where she lived until her death in Hamburg in 1954. So why had Jessie Jordan become a spy? She claimed it was because it was dangerous and exciting that she was about to become a spy for Germany, but always maintained she bore no ill will towards the UK, nor had she become pro-German. She only did it, she said, to oblige friends in Germany, and wanted some excitement in her life. If you enjoyed this episode of Scotland's History, please like, comment and subscribe. Until next time, thank you for watching.